Meeting will come to order, please. Johanna, please read the statement of compliance.
The notice requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act for this meeting have been satisfied. A copy of the annual meeting notice was sent to the press of Atlantic City, Star Ledger, posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, the municipal website, and filed in the office of the municipal clerk. Please turn off all cell phones.
And please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Attention, salute. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Becker?
Here.
Commissioner Amadeo?
Here.
Commissioner Blumberg?
I am here.
First item for discussion is third floor decks. Who would like to lead off on that? Roger, is that you?
Go ahead, Jim. Oh, sorry.
I support it.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. As you are aware, this past June and July, we had an ordinance revision for introduction, which was approved by the governing body, went to the planning board, and found to be consistent with the master plan to permit third floor decks to be by right, meaning no variances. So there are some clarification issues, and so it was pulled from the agenda in July, rightfully so. We discussed it internally with the planning board that it shall not include third floor decks in the rear yard, just facing the street alone in areas that third floor decks are not permitted at all. So what this is a reintroduction of the ordinance. The front yard fences portion was all removed, so it says third floor decks, and what it is, it's going to allow them with a certain design criteria to be much smaller than second floor decks. They can only be facing the street. Any deck that comes in for third floor other than street front would still require variance and proper notification. So this is just a clarification of that ordinance, and hopefully we can get this to the planning board next week for consistency review and back to the governing body November 3rd for approval in its second reading.
Mayor, may I ask Roger a question?
Go, John.
Roger, can you explain to us, with planning, it's proper when it's consistently granted variances for a certain zoning issue.
Yes.
If they continually pass, then it's proper planning to correct our ordinance and address the issue.
Yes, you are correct. Actually, third floor decks have been approved by the planning board consistently for about 3 years now. So this is on the books to be by right for about 2 years, but we couldn't come up with a design criteria. So what we did is we allowed another year to pass to see what designs worked, which really fit the best.
Could you estimate how many third floor decks over the past 3 years have been approved by the planning board?
I'd say over 50.
Okay, and then how many are on the docket for the next two to three meetings, planning board, zoning board meetings?
I think there's at least 12 with the threat of 5 or 6 more coming in.
Now, what will happen with those cases for the homeowners themselves? They wouldn't have to come for a variance?
Well, there's the ones that are coming in for next week. It's their option whether they want to proceed or not.
Okay. Or they can hold off until the ordinance changes?
They can punt until their next meeting and make sure it gets passed. That way, I mean, they're already still in the queue. My recommendation is they stay in the queue and maybe wait for the next meeting. Then the ones that are coming in for November, they can be basically expunged from the agenda. And you're going to save a lot of applicants a lot of money and time. Because most of these that are coming in now were the ones that were waiting in July.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Roger, what's the new design criteria to control these desks?
In essence, they have to be facing the street. So if you have a corner property, they can pick which street they want to be on because they're both front yards. They can't be in the side yard, they can't be in the rear yard. They can't be larger than half the size of the deck below. They can't protrude past the roof line, meaning the
They're
railings.
carved into the building.
Right, and the 2/3 of the required railing height would have to be a pent roof. So you would not be seeing 3 decks. You'll be seeing 2 decks with a pent roof. That'll be, you won't see the deck itself. You won't even probably see the door. It's going to look like a window.
All right, Mario, you have any questions?
Yeah, there seems to be a concern that the houses in Margate seem to be getting taller and wider, every one that's being built. Can we confirm that this ordinance in no way, shape, or form allows anybody to build any higher or any wider or any more lot coverage that currently exists in the ordinance?
I can confirm that, yes.
Okay.
It does not add any height, does not add any width, does not encroach into any setback.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Roger. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, everybody satisfied? We shall move on to the engineer's report. Mr. Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, we will start off with item A, which is our citywide dredging permit application. This was submitted last month on September 15th. We're in the review cycle now with DEP. So once we receive their comments back, we will obviously review those and react to those, and I will report accordingly. Item B is the sister project to our dredging permit, which is our Shelter Island Salt Marsh Restoration permit. This project is scheduled for a joint permit processing meeting with DEP and Army Corps on November 9th. As I've mentioned at past meetings, we have received informal direction from the DEP. This meeting will provide the team with formal direction from both permitting agencies as well as the consulting agencies that also review these applications, which will allow us to move forward with the permit application submission. Item C is the flood mitigation work at this building that we've been waiting on for quite some time now. The discussion at the last meeting was that we will look to program this work into our next capital budget, whether or not FEMA comes through with the additional funding. We do have $86,000 in FEMA funding already allocated. We have been assured by FEMA that they would allocate additional funds to meet the project costs, but we have been waiting for over 2 years for that to happen. So this is an important project. It's a resiliency project, and so we will plan to implement it one way or the other in the upcoming capital budget. The next 4 items are the various improvements that we have planned over at the Sigrim Park. 2 of those projects are on the agenda today for authorization to bid. That's the batting cage upgrades as well as the walkway upgrades. So we will be getting those projects out to bid very shortly. The Wall of Fame project will have a concept plan to present to you probably within the next couple weeks, just to take a look at it before we get that project out to bid. And then sure.
I'm sorry.
Rich, go ahead.
May I ask, before we
Rich?
skip past that,
Talk microphone, Rich.
could you just amplify the walkway project, because it is on the authorization on the second, to explain what we're doing there?
Yes.
And what the materials are?
So that right now, there's the existing walkway that kind of runs around the perimeter of the park, that it consists of the permeable pavers with kind of that pea gravel fill that has been a bit of a nuisance. We will be replacing that walkway with pervious asphalt pavement. So that's the plan. We do have right now there's a border that borders the existing path. So we are going to bid this with an alternate bid to maintain that border on either side of the asphalt. We're going to bid it both ways and see what the additional cost may be to keep that border. But that's essentially what the project includes.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay, Rich?
Yeah.
Continue, please.
Sure. The fourth SIGRIM project on the list here are tennis courts 1 through 4, which is in the engineering process for construction completion before the summer season. Item H is our next state aid road, which is reconstruction of Winchester Avenue from Douglas Avenue to Exeter Avenue. The engineering is essentially complete on here. We're just wrapping up the final drafting. So I would expect that you'll see a bid schedule for this project on an upcoming report. Item I is the 2022 road program, which is following behind our work on Winchester. So this project has been surveyed. We're getting the plans put together, and then we'll move into the design phase for the road program. And again, this project includes work on Jefferson Avenue, Gladstone Avenue, as well as the rehab of the manhole out here at Washington Avenue and Ventnor Avenue. So that project is moving forward in the engineering phase. We're wrapping up our concept plans for the Washington Avenue streetscape. I look forward to sharing that with everyone. We will be applying for grant funds for work on Washington Avenue consistent with the master plan, and this concept plan will also just act as a master plan, so to speak, going forward, whether or not we are successful in receiving this particular round of grant funds. So that work is wrapping up. We have an item on here for our CRS activities, working with Jim on this to, again, be proactive and keep that process moving, looking ahead to the next cycle. We did receive bids for the Margate Library roof. Now, we reported at a prior meeting that we received bids in August. We did reject those bids. They came in over budget. We did put it back out to bid with an alternative roofing system. And you can see on the report here that the low bid came in at $210,000. Still, I believe that's still above what we have in the budget for this project. So my thought was that we pause, we discuss what our options are. I know the city has done some roof work through the co-op, so I can work with Roger on that. And I think we need to compare all of our options and then decide if we want to reject these bids, go with the co-op, or since we've bid twice, we can reject these bids and negotiate directly with the contractor. So we have some options on how we want to proceed here. And I'll,
Question.
yeah, sure.
Question, please.
John?
Thank you. What was the engineer's estimate on it?
I don't have that with me, Commissioner. I
Well,
apologize.
all right, well, how close was this, the 2010 to the last set of bids?
I think it came in lower, and I think that was on the alternative system that came in lower. Yep.
Is there any urgency to replacing that roof?
No, because we can't do the roof until they do the HVAC anyway, so we're waiting
Right.
for the HVAC
Okay.
equipment to come in.
So there's no leaks?
Correct.
It's tight, okay.
Yep, yep,
Very good, thank you.
yep. So we'll have more detail on that at the next meeting as far as what the recommendation is on how to proceed with that project. Item M is just our running list of grant applications. We've touched on this at past meetings. We do have a meeting coming up regarding the Adams Avenue Pump Station project with Mr. Rotella. There's a grant source out there associated with the wind farm project. They have some community give back funds that they're looking to divvy up. So we have a brief presentation to make for some matching funds for that project. And obviously we'll keep watch over all these projects for grant opportunities going forward. Coming down to our construction projects, under maintenance bonds, we just completed an inspection on well 10, and we went ahead and recommended release on that maintenance bond, so that only leaves one left before the end of the year, which is the 1920 curb and gutter program. That maintenance bond expires in December. We'll do the inspection accordingly. Our closeout list, our Benson Avenue water tank has been on the list waiting for its anniversary inspection. That inspection is scheduled for October 25th. So once we complete that inspection, we'll get a report back. And if there's any remedial action needed, they'll go ahead and make those repairs, and then we can finally close that project out and get it on to the maintenance bond. Amherst Avenue Phase 2 is also on the list here, and we're working on closing that out with our DOT paperwork and so on. Item Q is Amherst Avenue Phase 1 from Douglas to Clarendon. The punch list work has finally been completed by Mathis Construction on that project. So this will be slotting up into the closeout list. Obviously, that project has its own unique circumstances that will be taken into consideration during closeout, but we can kind of close the book on the construction portion of the project and add that up to the closeout list. Item R is the HVAC project I referenced at the library. That we're waiting on the equipment there with the roof project to follow that we just discussed. Item S is the interior renovations over at the municipal building, which is ongoing. We are working through some issues with the contractor, ordering some of the last remaining items that need to be ordered, some doors and some hardware, but the contractors, continues to work over there, making good progress. You see the notes on here. The drywall's nearly complete. I understand the ceiling grid has started. And again, this project is going to ultimately be completed once the HVAC equipment comes in for the newly renovated office area. Item T is the 2021 road program, which we split into 2 phases. Phase 1 was completed in the spring, and the contractor's back in town for Phase 2, working over on Mansfield Avenue. We're also going to be repaving the police parking lot as part of this phase. So work has restarted, and we're looking to get, obviously, all of that buttoned up before the cold weather sets in. 2022 curb and gutter is ready to start construction in early November. We did have a pre-construction meeting for that project on October 6th. And likewise, our next phase of beach bulkhead access at Knight Avenue and Union Avenue had a pre-construction meeting on October 13th, also scheduled to begin in early November. And then the last item on the list, which we've touched on it the past couple meetings, is the water meter replacement program. We're just waiting for some items to come in line before we can, funding in particular, before we can schedule that pre-construction meeting to get the first phase of the water meter replacement underway. That concludes.
Can I ask, can we jump back to the road program?
Yes, sir.
Someone asked me what would be the length of the job on Mansfield Avenue? Do you have any idea at all, Ed?
The limits of Mansfield? I don't have that on a report here, Merritt, but I will get that for you before the end of the meeting.
So the answer then is no, right?
The answer is not yet.
Did you mean the geographic length or the length of the time?
At the time,
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant, thank you, Rich. I thought you meant the limits. That work is supposed to be, expected to be completed before the winter. I don't have a timeline yet on exact.
Okay, that's good.
But I get that. Yep,
Okay.
no problem.
thank you. Okay. Thank you, Ed. Any questions for Ed before we move on?
I have a question.
Go ahead, man.
Ed, on the item G, at the tennis courts, we've been plagued for a very long time with cracks in a couple of these courts related to what we understood or understand is a creek that runs underneath of them. I don't think we've ever dug up completely the courts that we're going to be working on now, that like we did the 5 and 6. Do we know that when we dig these up completely, that we're going to once and for all solve the problem that we have with this creek that runs under these courts? Because I hate to, I just don't want to do this and then 2 or 3 years down the road, we see the same cracks that continue to plague us.
So the two-part answer would be that we're planning on doing 1 through 4 the same way we did 5 and 6. We are going to completely reconstruct the tennis courts.
Right.
If we do, one thing we can do to address the issue that you're referring to that we've done on other tennis courts is you could do an under drain system that helps to kind of relieve that pressure, which we've done successfully on other courts. But that is the goal of this project is not a Band-Aid, it's to fix the issue.
So can we look into that system that you're talking about?
Yep.
Either make it an option or I don't know what.
I know 5 and 6 we haven't had any cracks.
Right.
And in years past when we Band-Aided the fix, we'd have a crack within that year.
Right.
So it's been, 3 years now since we did 5 and 6 and we don't have cracks.
So if it's an extra step, why don't we investigate what it would cost if we know that it would, absolutely help us?
Yep.
And then my second question is, I know that when we did 5 and 6, we did, Andrew and the team did a lot of work on the different surfaces and the different speeds that you can achieve when you build these courts. And I just want to make sure that we know what we want for these next 4, that whether they're fast, medium, slow, intermediate, what they are, that we get that right.
So I will work with Andrew on that and
We've had discussions
Okay.
with Donna, and she's a tennis player, and
Okay.
trying to talk to people, see what they want. Because right now we have 2 soft courts, which are 3 and 4, and then the other 4 are hard courts. So
Okay.
We're trying to come up with that.
All right, good.
How we're going to do that.
Good. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anything else? Okay, let's move to department head reports. Mr. Abbott, why don't you start today?
Very briefly, we had our last oral argument, hopefully for Rise Against Hate on an Oprah complaint, where they wanted the addresses, phone numbers, et cetera. The court is going to write an opinion, and we are awaiting it. That argument was yesterday afternoon. It's the third time. Court reserved the right to reconvene the lawyers if there are any other questions. We are one of about 30 government entities that are being sued on this online code red as to whether or not we have to give the information, which we don't have. The third party has it, of their private phone numbers, addresses, email addresses, when they get the hazard warning, if there's a storm or a blizzard. And it'll be interesting to see what the judge does. He's really putting a lot of time in this. I guess he anticipates it'll probably be appealed one way or the other. So that's where that is. I also have started to work on this business registration requirement now. Our legislature has deemed that we have to collect insurance data, apparently, from everybody who has a rental property. I guess that makes it easier for lawyers and whatnot to see if there's an insurance policy at the end of the rainbow. So that's going to be another expense. We're going to have to figure out if there's going to be a fee, or do we build that into a licensing fee. Apparently all the other towns around us are grappling with this as well. Nobody's really come up with a final ordinance, final version of it. But Johanna and I are working on it. She's been pretty good. She's assembled some other data for me. Unfortunately, the state, they make these mandates. They're not going to pay for it, and they don't give any guidance. They don't say, here's our model ordinance that we want you to follow. They haven't done that here. So we'll see, but I'll have that shortly.
Jim has a question.
Do you know who's going to handle that, the insurance policies? Is that going to be our job when we do a rental inspection to make sure?
Well, that's one of the things you have to work on. I think we're going to have to do it when you get your licensing, however paperwork you have licensing. And then they have to show, here's my insurance certificate. And then that goes on a website so that it's available to anybody in the world. This is a state mandate, it's required, so.
May I?
Yeah.
Johanna?
Please.
At this point, I have a lot of individuals that rent their properties in a panic that they're going to be fined $500 to $1,000 if they don't submit this. There is nothing stated that we should initiate a fine. It falls under the landlord-tenant registration in most instances. I think what I see happening is working with the building department prior to achieving a CO for a rental property. They'll have to submit their insurance information and the landlord-tenant registration. I don't see a need for a fee. I think it's a lot of bookkeeping for just paperwork that needs to be supplied. It doesn't require an inspection. It doesn't. So my take on it is it's just an ordinance that we need to put together, enact, and follow through with. More paperwork.
Will you and the solicitor work together and come up
Oh,
with?
we are working
We
back
are
and
working
forth. We
on
have
this.
been.
Cool.
It's funny, the other towns too, they're all trying to figure out how do you deal with this? What do you do with it? But I'm gonna start with my own building. I've got my insurance certificate. I'll bring it over to you, Johanna, and we figure out what to do with mine. We can figure out what to do with the rest of them. But the idea is there'll be a registry statewide. So like if you wanna see if that building has an insurance policy because you hurt yourself,
You can go online and you can see it.
go online now. Oh, yes, they have insurance. So,
But then we have to figure out what can be redacted. It's
well, they don't
it's
give any
so
guidance on that.
open-ended at this point.
It's pretty open-ended. So, well, we're getting there. We're
Yep.
working on that. And we have the ability to enforce it, or the state has the ability to enforce it. But we're not gonna enforce it right now, penalize people. So who's ever having a panic,
I've had two
they shouldn't panic.
people that have rental properties, and they read something that was in the Buzz that was so off kilter of what is actually going on.
What's the buzz?
I know you'll find this hard to believe, but it's probably not right. So,
The buzz.
The buzz? We won't discuss that.
That'd be fact if it's on there.
but,
Okay. You
no,
have
they're
anything
not
else,
gonna be
Scott?
penalized. So we'll be fine with this. So
Good.
we're getting there. That's it.
That's it?
Just, I think I said, and if I didn't, I will. There was a fascinating article about the new building code and what's coming up in Florida now, which I think we're gonna see here too. I think.
Well, they announced it today. By December, the new regulations, the DEP is putting together the regulations.
There you go. Yeah, I mean.
We're gonna hear the new regulations. It's gonna affect 15 to 20% of the state.
Well, that's us.
Short towns.
And I think one of them, I don't know if they said this or not, or maybe Roger knows, I think they're gonna push that minimum BFE plus, what, base 4? Is that's what we have? Are they gonna go 5? So that means our buildings are gonna be another, what, foot higher, right?
The ones with the garages below
Yeah.
will not change. We're already there.
But I mean, I know a lot of people are concerned, we don't like the high buildings and all this. This will now be a DEP statewide regulation, which we were ahead of, so that we got that, insurance benefit where we get, 25% off our flood insurance premiums. But now, you don't have the option. It's, once those regs come in, but I don't know, I'm confused if it's 4 or 5 feet above BFE.
The DEP wants 5 feet.
And I think that's what Commissioner Allen is talking about, that.
Yes, if I can read something quickly. It's new regulations could force New Jersey developers to build future homes and businesses to hire and reserve more land for flood control efforts under new environmental permitting rules likely to be released by December, according to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. The new rules, which would affect inland areas of the state at risk of flooding, could go into effect by mid-2023.
So,
That's not really coastal, but it's like
Pardon me?
that's riverine areas, like
Yeah.
North Jersey, Delaware River communities, Raritan River.
but.
Yeah, but it's also coastal.
Coastal.
It says it in the article.
And-
I'll send you
And everybody
the
I'm talking to, environmental consultants, they're telling us we're gonna get hit too, higher, courtesy of Hurricane Ian. So, I mean, that's really pushed it to get us done.
Okay.
Well, what he didn't read is that every new house is gonna have to have a sand dune in front of it.
Let's hope not.
They're gonna have their own
Cool. All right.
it's bad shit. Anyhow,
Thank you,
that's-
Roger. Thank you, Scott.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Frank?
Yeah, the guys in Public Works been working on the Fulton Avenue Playground, which Andrew told you, and the utilities are into that area there. They go all the way up to the building, which was a big plus. Here on Washington Avenue on the 200 block, we had to get Delta Line in to look at the electric. The street lights haven't worked correctly in a long time. They've been flooded out. They've been broken in a couple spots. Delta Line came in, and what they did was they ran all new lines, and they found out where the breaks were. They corrected everything, so all the lights are working now correctly on Washington Avenue.
Awesome.
We went to the south side on the beach block of Quincy Avenue and removed the last gas street light that was there. We didn't throw it away, we kept it in the yard. For what reason, I don't
Historic
know, but,
Society will want that.
yeah, it's pretty big though. We had a meeting up at the dog park, there's various things they're looking for, which are just maintenance issues, and we're gonna start that next week. The handicap walkways through the bulkheads all been closed, except for the streets that have, don't have steps. We winterized beach headquarters. The sprinkler systems around town have been winterized. We still left the ball field bathrooms on because their sports teams are still playing, and when they're finished, we will shut them down too. That's all I have.
Good job, Frank, as always. Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, Frank, thanks for leaving the porta potty at the unit at our comp 9001 because the pickleball players are still there playing.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And they do use it. I can see them.
Oh, yeah.
The flood conference is next week. If anybody wants to come by and see and wants to learn anything about these new regulations, there's going to be quite a few people showing up to deliver remarks on the new PAC regulations, which are going to come out, I guess, sooner than later. This new 5-foot freeboard. The guest speaker is going to go over that, and we are going to have the commissioner down at this conference also with the DEP.
Which commissioner?
Lorette.
Lorette.
Yeah.
Oh, he's gonna be, oh, okay.
We also had 21 demolitions now. The last one this week was on Union Avenue. It's a house move. Hal's going to lift the house up and take it away, which is a little better than the demolition. You don't have all the trash coming out and debris and everything.
That's since September 15th.
Yeah, it's September 15th, which means Roger's being super busy with the zoning approval of all these 21 new houses. JJ is Jim Jarvis, our electrical inspector. He assisted us on inspection for the new streetscape area on Ventnor and Jerome. The new lights that are going up there, Saganis is installing. They getting ready to run some underground conduit, and he put the boxes in, and he went over there and generously did an inspection, got that going. That's all I have.
Thank you. Roger?
Thank you. In addition to the county lights, Dennis and I met with the Atlantic County veterinary representatives on Monday, or was it Tuesday morning, to iron out some things, some underground obstructions that full cooperation from the county and the city of Ventnor and with the county's engineer. And I think we made some headway on that, don't you think? Yep. Also, before you tonight is a couple of resolutions for landscape contract. Traditionally, we've had one contract go out. We're going to split it into two. So we're going to segregate the Parkway section, perhaps at Marvin Gardens and that, besides the ballparks and the other sites. And also the cleaning and televising of sewer systems, that's our annual contract. These are just authorization to produce specifications, go out to bid, to hopefully be awarded by the end of the year. And also, in tagging along with the BFE to +5, we should look at adopting that pretty soon. And the reason I'm saying that is state law, if you have an existing non-conforming structure, you're only allowed to elevate it to +3. Then you have to go in front of the planning board or zoning board, either one. So if we go to +5, that would be our lowest elevation requirement, and that would preclude them from going to the zoning board because that's our lowest standard. Just something to consider where we're making somebody lift their house once, and then 6 months down the road, they're going to be non-compliant because of the +5. So that could be an issue that we need to think about ahead of time. And I talked to Jimmy about that last week, and he thought it was a good idea. I mean, I don't like some of the other stuff that they're making us do, but overall, you have to think that maybe it's for the best. So we have a place to come back to.
Scott, you have a question?
Let me comment on this and just, because I deal with other cities and other boards as well. We all have to deal with this. Is it going to be 5 feet to the first floor where you stand, or is it going to be 5 feet to the bottom joist where we then come to that issue about ductwork, heating, special type?
I can answer that real quick. Right now, in our city's ordinance, we have BFE base flood, and our freeboard is 3 feet to the bottom of the floor. We allow another foot for zoning, so you get away from the flood-resistant requirements. I see us doing the same thing. To me, freeboard should be the bottom of the floor. I mean, if you allow a 5-foot freeboard, but you have to have these conditions, that's not true freeboard.
Bottom of the joist,
Bottom of the joist, yes.
not the floor, which is here, the joist.
Right.
So what's the recommendation?
And anything that hangs below that.
Has to be water resistant.
Yeah.
Right, so what is this, when you say 5, I get confused. Is it 5 here, 5 here?
Well, we haven't had really open dialogue about that, but my vision is keeping it the same, where you go to 5 to the bottom. So that way you don't need
5 to the bottom.
water-resistant insulation, water-resistant wood.
And the urgency here, so we understand, now you have all these new homes getting built, and now they're gonna be built at the older standard, right? So you have 21 new homes, and now, in 6 months from now, they're not gonna meet the new requirement. So I guess they'll get penalized on their flood insurance probably, because they're not at that minimum requirement, right?
That possibility exists. It depends how extreme they go with, how they're gonna penalize people that are not compliant today, but not compliant
Well,
next year.
we know if you don't meet the required flood elevation, whatever it is, and you get flood insurance, you pay extra because you're a foot off or 2 foot off or whatever.
But the key is, you're still above base flood. That's the magic
Well,
number.
that's the magic word.
Is the base flood.
And base flood is 3, right?
Base flood is 8, 9, 10, 11.
Okay.
The freeboard is the +3.
But,
Right.
but it's all changing. all changing now.
It's all changing.
They're broke, and they just had a catastrophic event in Florida, and they're gonna be even broker, is that the word I would use? Broke. So, we can see
We're broke.
this is coming. And that's, so there's some urgency to do this. We really, whatever it's gonna be, let's put our feelers out, let's get the intel on this as to where does it work best? Because it's crazy to have people build brand-new homes, and then in a month or 6 months,
Well,
they're off.
especially the ones that are elevating to the minimum standard.
Correct, we've got a few of those now, they're spending money to elevate, Christ, they ought to go up another foot or two so they comply. That's my urgency, that's.
Right,
where-
and like, as I said before, the homes now that have the parking below, we're there. We're in good shape with that,
But they gotta have parking below, so.
yes. You're gonna see that more often, and that adds to the bulk, but that's required from FEMA. And also, a benefit of that is you're not pushing a building to one side of the property, you're able to center it. You're actually providing more clear space on the sides. So your side yard setbacks, kind of opens it up a little bit.
Maybe we can study this a little bit more and have a recommendation shortly, like next meeting,
Sure.
right? I mean, I feel like maybe we can talk to DEP and see what's it gonna be, fellas, so we know what to do. We don't wanna see homes, brand-new homes not being compliant. That's the issue.
Well, they already sent the model ordinance out, expecting us to have it done by last
Well,
July.
okay, but is that elevation set? I thought they were still debating.
5 foot of freeboard, how we measure where we want to go to the bottom or the top, it's up to us.
So, if I might, now that you civil engineers went through all that technical stuff, for the lay guy that's a dummy, does that mean that houses are gonna be 2 feet taller?
Yep.
I'd say the houses now that have parking below will not be any taller.
That have parking below?
Unless
But
they're
if
in
it
a
doesn't
very-
have parking below, it could then be
Yes.
2 foot taller,
Yes,
which.
maybe 3.
Okay, and so when the house becomes 2 foot taller, do we then say, you know what, we don't want houses this tall anymore?
It's a state regulation.
But could we now say, instead of whatever we allow in that district, we're gonna allow 2 foot less
For the height,
on height?
I would say it's irrelevant because it's 30 feet across the board right now. So you have 30 feet above parking or 30 feet above a crawl space if you're lifting a house. With the new regulations, you can have 30 feet everywhere across the board. So
Okay.
the house that's
so
30 feet is
we'll-
not going to be 32.
Again, when people come and start complaining and talking to Mike about how these houses are, these monsters, we're gonna blame it on the state again. State did it, it's not our fault. But then there are people that are gonna come and say, okay, you knew what the state was doing, so why didn't you say, you know what? It's no longer 30 feet, you gotta make it 28 feet. So that the houses are no longer, going up to to where Jack and the Beanstalk lives.
I get that, but right now you're allowed 2.5 stories in most districts, if not all, except in multifamily. In multifamily zone, if you have parking below, it's only 2 stories. We can look at that on maybe smaller lots. In my opinion, a smaller lot's less than 40 feet wide should be 2 stories over parking. So you don't have the tall, narrow building effect. But to come back and say, no, you can't have more than 2 stories above parking everywhere now, I think you're gonna open up the city to some litigation because they're selling that house based on square footage that they're allowed to in that house. When that ground floor is banned, our starting point is changed by someone else.
But again, if the ordinance changes, and I'm not a lawyer, if we decided that we were gonna make ordinance changes, then the people would know that these ordinances are in effect, and you know what? We can't build what we could have built 2 years ago. I don't know, I think it's certainly worth the planning board taking up and discussing and at least looking at that.
Right.
That-
What you mean
that-
is you'd get rid of the half a story, third floor.
I would think, yeah,
That's what you're.
and these houses would no longer, be, 5 and 6 bedroom palaces. It's just, it's just a thought.
As Mario said, I don't know if the rest of us you are getting comments from people. I certainly have about the height and the bulk and all that of homes anymore. So I think we should look, I agree with Maury, we should look at this very closely, and we have an opportunity to kind of make some changes if it's necessary. Okay? Anyone else? Thank you, Roger. Rich, you're next.
Can't top that. That was a good discussion. I will just amplify slightly what was mentioned by Frank in terms of meeting at the dog park. The mayor and I and Frank met at the dog park with a single neighbor who says he represented other neighbors potentially and had some concerns with the dog park, most of which, as Frank indicated, we can take care of routinely. They're not difficult. The one thing that he said that he wanted and he thought other people wanted is to go back to a key fob system. I think this commission's already made a decision that they wanted to keep it open. And frankly, we haven't had any operational problems since this kept open. There was concerns with dog bites and people coming from all over and all that. Really, it hasn't made any operational difference. But you may get faced with that question coming back, and I just wanted to say it publicly to you here, and so that we understand exactly where you are and you understand where we are with respect to that question. There were 7 things on there. That was one of them. A second one in which neither Frank or I think is necessary at this time, and I thought we had stated it clearly when we were there, because I made you restate it, is he would like to see us paint all of the chain link fence. He wanted us to replace it, but frankly, there's nothing wrong with the chain link fence, and it's extremely expensive to replace it all. The fence is in much better condition than a lot of other fences, especially fences in recreation that we have around town. Then he said, well, let's paint it then. It is, what is the word, spawned, the paint on the rails of the chain link is chipped, peeling, not visibly hanging off, it's just that some of it has faded or peeled. I am not for painting chain link fencing. I mean, when it goes, we have to replace it, but I'm saying it publicly here because you may hear that too. He's very upset that we're not going to paint it. But Frank said, he said, well, spray it. Frank said, I'm not spraying down there, getting a contractor to come in there and spray and have spray paint go all over the place, get in the dog park, have dogs coming in there and people complaining about that. So go take a look at it before anybody makes any decisions. But frankly, it's hidden behind landscaping. You can hardly see the chain link fence. It's inside, and inside the landscaping, there's another fence. What kind of fence is that, Frank? That's a very, very nice, attractive fence around the outside of the whole dog park, not in where the chain link fence are, where the 2 runs are for the small dogs and the large dogs. There's some latches that are broken. The gazebo that we put up a couple of years ago is well used, and it could use repainting. And Frank's agreed to do all that. So frankly, the dog park looks pretty good, and it's very operational.
It's functional, right?
Excuse me?
Absolutely.
It's functional.
Absolutely.
That's what it's supposed to be.
It's a dog park.
It's a park.
It's a park. I'm sorry to take so much time, but I can just anticipate
Yeah,
some concern, and I would like you to be ahead of it and go look at it sometime when you're out there. Tim Kreischer called me. He's the county shared services coordinator. He had sent a letter a month ago or so, and I arranged for the mayor and we'll arrange with the clerk to have him come at the next meeting to make a 5-minute presentation at a workshop just about some other shared service opportunities. The one thing that he mentioned in his letter that attracted my attention a little bit, and I'd say it to the police because they may or may not be interested, and I'd be interested in their opinion. He said there might be a possibility to get a shared service with Ventnor. He would be able to get some decibel equipment for measuring for noise complaints. I mean, we don't have that now. We don't have anybody trained on that. So I don't know what he's talking about, but I say it publicly that he's gonna come here. That's one of the things they'll talk about, and maybe the police can think about it between now and then and have some questions if they are interested. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Brian?
The police department just wants to remind everybody that the annual trick or treat's going to be on the 31st, and it's going to be between 6 and 8, and we'll have extra patrols on that evening to handle any issues that may arise. And in addition to that, in November, we'll again be participating in Atlantic Care's fundraiser. It's called No Shave November, and it raises funds for cancer patients with their expensive. It's called their Treasure the Moment Fund. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ryan. Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor. As Frank mentioned, his crew did a great job removing the Fulton Avenue playground. I was over there this afternoon as they finished it up. It was completely removed. And as he also mentioned, they found that we already had plumbing, sewer, and gas already set in there, so we didn't have to put those lines in. So the schedule for that is the installation of the new playground should be next week. It should only take a day or two. Then after that, we're having some concrete work done, and then the rubber. So within the next 2 or 3 weeks, we should have a new playground over there at Fulton Avenue. And then hopefully Vendome Avenue shortly thereafter. The delay in the Vendome playground is because of all the work going on in the building. We want to make sure people have access in and out of the building, so when they come down to meet, to do the Fulton playground, we're going to meet down at Vendome so that we can come up with a plan how to install that and make sure people can get in and out of the building safely. That's all I have.
Thank you, Andrew. Johanna?
I just had the insurance issue with the landlords and the businesses. Other than that, everything's good in the clerk's office.
Good. Chief Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. One, we had a great fire prevention week and programs throughout the city. We had a fire station visit that was outstanding with the preschool from Margate, and we did make it down to the Senior Citizen Pavilion. We're able to provide fire safety information for them as well. Two, I don't know if everybody saw it or on the news. It happened to be in Rich's backyard, but there was a pretty bad fire in Ocean City. The only reason I want to bring that up is it was a successful outcome as far as the family made it out safely. And from what I gather after speaking to Chief Smith in Ocean City, they were alerted of the fire by a smoke detector and the sound of the fire. The father was up and awake, thankfully. He told his 2 children who were kindergarten and 3rd grade to exit the house immediately as he went and grabbed his 9-month-old child to get that baby out as well. The reason I brought that up is it segues with fire prevention. The kids actually went outside to their meeting place and waited there for the father to come out with the other child. So we're talking about a 5-year-old and a 7-8-year-old that paid attention and actually did what they were supposed to do in the event of a fire. So I can't stress that enough of how important that is with your families, your grandchildren, your kids, everybody, to have a plan and know what to do in the event of a fire. We're coming up into our winter season. Frank mentioned shutting off water in that. I can't express it enough to our residents and visitors of Margate. If you have a home and it's going to be left for the season, please make sure your water is shut off and your proper connections to your outside water are taken care of. Public Works and the fire department respond to hundreds of calls during the off season in the winter for this. So please take care of that. And lastly, and I'm not trying to step on the toes, but I just want to mention Trunk or Treat is tomorrow night at the Performing Arts Center outside of Thai School off of Monmouth Avenue. They moved it to that location because it's bigger and they expect a bigger turnout. So please come out and support a great event. Trunk or Treat will go from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. tomorrow night behind the Performing Arts Center off of Monmouth Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I guess go ahead.
Rich has got a question.
John, you have anything?
Rich?
Rich, sorry.
Mayor, being that Dan mentioned that fire and I didn't know about, I mean, I knew about it because I live right across the alley from it. I didn't know about the meeting place for the children. That's a wonderful thing that you said. But I have a question relative to the fire. The way I knew that there was a fire, I was in bed but awake, is I heard an explosion. And we immediately looked out the window, which is right in our bedroom, and could actually see the fire go from the surface, the ground surface. It started outside the house, apparently, electrical of some kind, and explode up the whole house to the attic, all the way from bottom to the top, 2.5 stories, in one shot. Like sometimes you turn your fireplace on it, it just lights up. There were one or more, or two or more, the way I heard it, 2 or more propane tanks that exploded, that caused that sudden fire. I mean, I've seen fires 100 times, not in houses, but fires where it takes a long time to build. This fire went from nothing, basically, to the whole back of the house, top to bottom, left to right, on fire.
And just to
Scariest thing I've ever seen.
segue on that, and Roger and Jimmy can stand here to say it too. The house was vinyl sided, and there was probably, and you probably saw the house before, a lot of vinyl enclosures on the lower level, whether it was an outside shower, a storage area, or whatever. And that vinyl is a flammable material. It's made by products of oil, and it's gonna spread and intensify quick. We got lucky that last little fire we had on Essex Avenue was vinyl, but they had the old asbestos siding behind the vinyl, and that actually kept the fire from spreading any further and actually destroying the home. So we actually got really lucky, or we could have had a similar outcome just based on the products of that. But the propane tanks, again, another reminder to residents, please store them in proper locations, assure that they're closed off and they're in a safe place. And they should never be stored indoors. And when I say that, they shouldn't be in your garage or in your home,
Can't be
stored
left out
anywhere.
all winter?
It can be left out all winter, but just check them again. Most people don't own the cylinders. They actually return them, and you know, it's the rent, borrow, whatever, however they want to call it. Mayor, what do they call that for the propane exchange? There you go. So they exchange them, but just check your propane cylinders after the season, because the fire did start electrically, like Rich said, and most likely it was attributed to some sort of, you know, possible salt air intrusion or something on something over time. So anything's possible. Just check, make sure everything's safe. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Joanna, did you have something to add?
I would like to remind the public that we have an election on November 8th upcoming.
Oh, really?
We will still have District 3 and District 4 voting over at high school, which they will enter through the Monmouth Avenue side.
Thank you, Joanna. John, you have anything? Mark, anything?
No, just maybe a reminder that I saw all the barriers on Amherst Avenue, so it's not that we're expecting a hurricane. I think it's marathon weekend.
Yep.
And is that Sunday, Captain?
It's
Is that
Sunday.
Sunday, okay. So go out and cheer and/or run,
Have a moment.
whatever floats your boat.
Not running.
Thank you. At this
AC
point,
Marathon.
we'll open for public comment. Is there any public comment? We have 3 minutes. You could speak on anything that was discussed at this meeting. Is there any public comment? There being no public comment, is there a motion to close public comment?
I'll move closing public comment.
Second,
Mayor Becker?
Yes.
Commissioner Amadeo?
Yes,
Commissioner Blumberg?
yes.
Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
so moved.
Second,
Mayor Becker?
Yes.
Commissioner Amadeo?
Yes.
Commissioner Blumberg?
yes.
We will reconvene at 4 o'clock.